January 9th, 1936, Springfield Armory, Massachusetts. A man in a simple wool suit, his French-Canadian accent still intact after decades in America, stood before a table covered in rifles. His name was Jean-Baptiste Garand, though everyone called him John, and the weapon resting on the polished oak was about to alter the course of modern warfare. For decades, soldiers had marched into battle with bolt-action rifles. The Germans had their Carabiner 98K, a dependable descendant of the Mauser system. The British swore by their Lee Enfield. The Americans clung to Springfield 1903. All of them required a soldier to lift, pull, chamber, and reset before every shot. Skilled marksmen could work the bolt with speed, but it was still a mechanical pause, one heartbeat between shots that could mean life or death. The rifle Garand unveiled that winter day didn't need that pause. It ran on a gas-operated system fed by a small, revolutionary invention, an 8-round en-bloc clip. A soldier could fire as fast as he could squeeze the trigger. When the last shot cracked out, the empty clip would spring free with a metallic ping, and another could be slammed home in seconds. The U.S. Army's Ordnance Department had tested dozens of prototypes since the First World War. They wanted reliability. They wanted power. Above all, they wanted something that would give the American infantryman an edge. In the M1 rifle, they found all three. The decision was official. The United States would become the first major power to equip its line infantry not with bolt-action rifles, but with a semi-automatic weapon. Production began slowly, but by the time the clouds of war spread across Europe, Springfield Armory and Winchester were turning out rifles by the tens of thousands. Eventually, over 5.4 million M1 Garands would be produced. The Germans knew of its existence long before they faced it. Military attachés in Washington sent back reports, and Wehrmacht analysts in Berlin studied the specifications. Still, many dismissed it. Bolt-action rifles had ruled the battlefield for 40 years. A semi-automatic sounded extravagant, even impractical. They told themselves American industry might produce the weapon, but never in numbers to arm every infantryman. They were wrong. By 1942, the rifle was in the hands of U.S. forces in North Africa. German officers captured at Kasserine Pass expressed surprise at the volume of fire American rifle squads could unleash. They noted how U.S. infantry appeared to fire almost as if armed with light machine guns. These observations were filed away in intelligence summaries, but skepticism lingered. The real reckoning came in the ruined towns of Europe. Urban warfare exposed every weakness of the bolt-action rifle. In narrow streets and shattered buildings, seconds mattered. A sniper with a Kar 98K might claim one victim, but the semi-automatic reply of an M1 armed squad could pin him down before he worked the bolt for a second shot. Even before the landings in Sicily and Italy, German diaries began to record rumors. The Americans carry a repeating rifle. It is not like ours. They fire again before you can move. The advantage was not simply mechanical. It shaped tactics. American fire teams learned to use the Garand's 8 shots in rhythm, one man suppressing while another moved, a third covering. It wasn't automatic fire, but it sounded close. The volume was enough to rattle defenders who expected long pauses between enemy shots. By war's end, the M1 Garand would be praised not just by Americans, but even by their enemies. General George S. Patton famously called it the greatest battle implement ever devised. German officers captured in 1945 admitted that man for man, the American riflemen often seemed to carry more firepower than their own squads. For German snipers, men trained to exploit pauses, silence, and the stillness between bolt-action shots, the Garand was a nightmare. It erased the rhythm they had mastered. Where once a single crack of a Mauser could dominate a street, now 8 rapid shots could drown it out. And in the cities of Europe, Troina, Naples, Aachen, Cologne. The clash of those two worlds, bolt-action precision and semi-automatic volume, would play out in blood and rubble. The rifle born on a workbench at Springfield Armory would follow America's soldiers into every ruined church, every narrow street, every sniper's nest. The Germans would learn soon enough. The M1 Garand was not just another rifle. It was a revolution, one 8-round clip at a time. July 23, 1943. Troina, Sicily. The town clung to the slopes of the Normandy Mountains, its narrow alleys winding upward toward a medieval fortress at the summit. For weeks, German units of the 15th Panzergrenadier Division had dug in, turning each street into a killing ground. Machine guns covered intersections, mines lay hidden in doorways, and in the shadows of church towers, German snipers waited. The Americans of the 1st Infantry Division, the Big Red One, were no strangers to combat after North Africa. But here, in the stone labyrinth of Troina, they faced something new. A city designed for defenders. As they advanced block by block, every open doorway seemed to whisper danger. Private Harold Rosen, Company F, 26th Infantry Regiment, remembered the moment his squad reached the piazza. A crack rang out, and the man next to him dropped instantly, a neat hole drilled above his temple. The shot had come from somewhere high, the echo bouncing off the stone walls. The men flattened, searching for the sniper. Normally, under bolt-action rules of war, there would have been time. The sniper would fire once, then retreat into cover, working the bolt for another shot. But Rosen and his comrades carried something different. Their M1 Garands came to their shoulders almost as one, muzzles sweeping the upper windows. 8 rounds in each, semi-automatic fire filling the air. The effect was startling. Dust and stones sprayed from the tower wall as round after round slammed into it. Windows shattered. Within seconds, the sniper's perch was a storm of fragments. When the Americans pushed forward, they found the German sprawled across the floor, his Kar 98K beside him, one hand still on the bolt handle he had never cycled. Reports from that day speak of volume of fire disproportionate to rifle squads. German officers assumed the Americans were supported by additional machine guns. They were not. It was the Garand, multiplied by every soldier in the squad, spitting out lead faster than a sniper could steady his sights. Troina was not unique. Across Sicily, Nicosia, San Fratello, Ardennes, urban combat revealed Garand's value. German and Italian defenders leaned heavily on sharpshooters to stall advances, but the Americans adapted quickly. Instead of freezing after a sniper's shot, they answered with a storm of fire. Squads spread into firing lines, Garands hammering away at likely nests. Some men carried binoculars, others simply blasted corners until silence fell. The psychological edge was real. German diaries captured after the campaign reveal surprise at the Americans' weapons. One sergeant wrote, "Their riflemen shoot without pause. It is as though every man has a machine gun." Another admitted frustration. "Our snipers cannot slow them. The Americans shoot too quickly and too many at once." The contrast was sharpest when compared to German doctrine. The Wehrmacht prized its snipers, training them to instill fear, to paralyze movement. In Russia, a single marksman had held down platoons, but in Sicily, facing the Garand, that rhythm broke down. The Americans didn't hesitate. They were overwhelmed. Colonel John Bowen of the 26th Infantry later summarized it bluntly. "Our rifle was our light machine gun. Where they had one sniper, we had 10 men firing back, all semi-automatic. That was the difference." By early August, the Germans began to withdraw northward. Troina, battered and half-ruined, was in American hands. In its streets lay the first clear proof. The Garand wasn't just a technical advantage, it was a tactical shift. Against men who lived by patience and precision, the rifle's speed stripped away the seconds snipers relied upon. The baptism of fire in Sicily set the tone. Urban combat would follow the Allies through Italy, France, and into Germany. In every shattered town, German marksmen would take their shots from windows and towers, and in every street below, Garand clips would sing out, one after another, 8 rounds at a time. The sniper's war had changed forever. November 1st, 1943. Naples, Italy. The city still smoldered. Whole blocks lay gutted from weeks of Allied bombing, and the German retreat had left booby traps in stairwells, mines in courtyards, and snipers in the shadows of shattered tenements. For American infantry pushing into the labyrinth, the war was no longer sweeping maneuvers across open desert. It was now measured in rooms and alleys, and every corner threatened a muzzle flash. Private First Class Dominic Caruso, an Italian-American from New Jersey, remembered how strange it felt to fight in streets where signs were written in the same language his parents spoke at home. But sentiment vanished when the first crack echoed down the alley. A sniper had chosen his perch well, second floor, behind laundry flapping on a line. One man dropped instantly, another hit in the leg, the rest hugged the cobblestones. In North Africa, Caruso's instinct had been to wait for the sniper's pause. With Springfields, that was the rhythm of battle. But here in Naples, his squad leader barked, "Pour it on!" 8-round clips slammed home, the Garands roared in unison, shots echoing off stone walls, tearing through shutters and plaster. Caruso himself fired until the en-bloc clip pinged free, the sound strangely sharp amid the thunder. When the squad rushed forward, the sniper was gone, killed or fled, no one knew. What mattered was that the squad hadn't been paralyzed. They had seized the initiative. The Germans noticed. Captured reports from the 15th Panzergrenadier Regiment complained that American rifle fire equals machine gun fire in volume. German doctrine had prized the sniper as a force multiplier in urban defense. From rooftops and bell towers, a skilled marksman could halt an enemy company, pinning them long enough for reinforcements to counterattack. In Russia, it worked. In Italy, against the M1 Garand, it faltered. At Cassino, the contrast grew sharper. The monastery above the town became the fortress of German paratroopers, the elite Fallschirmjäger who excelled at urban defense. Snipers haunted the rubble, firing from collapsed walls and broken arches. Yet American infantry, armed with Garands, responded with disciplined aggression. They no longer treated each sniper shot as untouchable threat. Instead, squads spread into firing lines, Garands hammering away at likely nests. Some men carried binoculars, others simply blasted corners until silence fell. Technical differences mattered. A Kar 98K sniper could fire a well-aimed round, but rechambering cost seconds. The Garand's gas system meant a rifleman could fire again instantly, even while moving cover to cover. U.S. after-action reports noted this advantage repeatedly, describing how squads could advance under their own firepower. For the Germans, the lesson was bitter. Post-war interrogations revealed frustration. One captured sniper confessed, "We were taught to dominate. Against Americans, it was reversed. They drowned us with rifle fire." By the time Rome fell in June 1944, the Americans had grown used to the rhythm of urban combat. Kick in a door, Garands up, shots fired in bursts, rooms cleared before a sniper could reset his sights. The rifle had become more than a weapon, it was a doctrine in itself. Italy had proven the point first glimpsed in Sicily. The M1 Garand denied the sniper his most valuable asset, time. And in the broken streets of Naples, Cassino, and Anzio, that truth was carved in stone and blood. June 13, 1944, Carentan, Normandy. The hedgerows had been brutal, but the first taste of true urban combat in France came here. The town's stone houses were scarred from artillery, its streets sleek with rain. German snipers from the 6th Fallschirm Jäger Regiment had made Carentan a maze of killing zones. Private William Larkin of the 502nd Parachute Infantry remembered running across an intersection when the crack of a rifle split the air. His buddy, running just behind, went down hard. "We hit the mud," he recalled later, "and we knew we had a sniper. But this wasn't North Africa. We weren't going to sit and wait." The squad leader pointed toward the attic window where the muzzle flash had flared. 8 Garands leveled at once. The thunder that followed shattered glass and ripped into the wood frame. The sniper never fired again. This pattern repeated itself through Normandy's villages. Saint-Lô, Carentan, Comont, all choked with rubble, all laced with sniper fire. German doctrine relied heavily on sharpshooters to slow American advances, forcing them to halt in exposed positions. But the Americans answered with firepower. Captured reports from German units after the Battle of Carentan noted with disbelief, the enemy rifle squads fired with the weight of an entire platoon. They assumed extra machine guns were hidden in the ranks. The truth was simpler. Every GI carried a semi-automatic weapon, and every trigger squeeze sent another 30-06 round downrange without pause. By July, in Saint-Lô, the fighting reached a new level of brutality. The city was reduced to rubble by bombardment, its narrow streets filled with collapsed walls. German snipers haunted the ruins, concealed in shell holes and cellars. One American officer described the advance. "Every step forward was a gamble. The sniper might take one of you, but after his first shot, we would bury him in Garand fire." The tactical rhythm had changed. With Springfields, squads once hesitated, calculating the odds of another sniper round. With Garands, hesitation gave way to aggression. U.S. infantry moved under their own suppressive fire, forcing snipers to retreat or risk being overwhelmed. German prisoners interrogated after Normandy admitted the frustration. "We could not shoot more than once without being drowned in bullets," another said. Another recalled, "Their rifles seemed automatic. It was impossible to maintain fire control." The Americans, for their part, grew confident. They developed counter-sniper drills that leaned on the Garand's volume of fire. A sniper's crack was the signal. Instantly, half a squad poured rounds into every window and roof line in sight. The other half maneuvered forward. Within moments, the sniper's perch was silenced by death, retreat, or sheer suppression. At Caen, British and Canadian forces struggled for weeks in similar urban fighting, often relying on slow, deliberate counter-sniper work. With Lee Enfields, U.S. units in adjacent sectors moved more aggressively, their Garands allowing them to flush snipers quickly. It was not that the rifle was more accurate, but that its speed of fire created space for movement. By late summer, as the Allies broke out from Normandy, German command was forced to reckon with reality. Reports forwarded to Berlin noted the advantage of American rifles in close combat, particularly in towns. It was an acknowledgement, however grudging, that the semi-automatic Garand had tipped the balance. In Normandy's villages, where each street corner could hide death, the difference between 1 shot and 8 was decisive. And the Germans who had trained snipers to dominate urban fighting found themselves instead dominated by the thunder of the M1 Garand. October 13, 1944, Aachen, Germany. The rain came down in sheets, turning the cobblestones into slick mirrors of rubble and flame. Aachen, the first German city to face capture, had become a fortress. Wehrmacht troops, bolstered by battle-hardened SS units, turned each street into a barricade, each cellar into a pillbox, each church steeple into a sniper's nest. For the Americans of the 1st Infantry Division, the Big Red One, it was a different war now. No open fields, no hedgerows, only shattered walls, doorways splintered by artillery, and the constant dread of a hidden rifleman waiting for a single exposed step. Private Richard Hensley remembered his squad clearing an apartment block near the city center. The building groaned with the weight of bombardment, plaster dust hanging in the air.
A sharp crack broke the silence. The man at point collapsed against the stairwell, blood soaking through his jacket. The sniper had fired once. That was all he got. Hensley and the others didn't hesitate. Their Garands roared, muzzles flashing as round after round hammered the upper floors. 8 shots each, clips ejected with metallic pings replaced in seconds. The wooden banisters splintered under the barrage, windows blew outward, and the sniper's perch dissolved in fragments. When they stormed the room, they found the German slumped over his Kar 98K, a bullet through his chest, his hand frozen on the bolt he'd never cycled.
Scenes like this repeated across Aachen. Snipers had been drilled to dominate urban combat. One crack of a Mauser, then silence, forcing men to freeze, too afraid to advance. But against the Garand, silence never followed. The Americans answered instantly at an overwhelming numbers. Official reports from the 26th Infantry Regiment described the city as a sniper's paradise. Yet the same reports noted that rapid rifle fire by squads neutralized sniper positions faster than artillery could. In effect, every GI with a Garand became part of the counter-sniper net. German accounts tell the other side. A captured officer from the 246th Volksgrenadier Division admitted that his sharpshooters had been frustrated by the enemy's repeating rifles, describing how fire came from many barrels at once, impossible to suppress. The psychological effect was immense. Snipers depended on fear, on the enemy's hesitation after a shot, but in Aachen, hesitation was gone. A rifleman struck down might be mourned later, but in that instance, the squad reacted like a single organism, filling the air with thunder. One veteran later described it. A sniper had the upper hand for half a second. That's all. After that, we had him. The Garand also allowed for new tactics. Squads began clearing buildings in pairs, one man firing steadily into doorways and windows while another advanced. With bolt-action rifles, this would have been impossible. The pauses too long, the covering fire too thin. With Garands, the rhythm flowed. Fire, move, until each block was secured. By October 21st, Aachen fell. It was the first German city captured by the Allies, a symbolic and strategic victory. In its rubble lay hundreds of snipers who had tried to slow the tide, only to find themselves outpaced by a weapon they had underestimated for years. After-action summaries from the 13th Corps highlighted the lesson. The American rifle squad equipped with the M1 could advance under its own suppressive fire. Enemy snipers, though skilled, could not cope with the volume. For the Germans, Aachen was a bitter warning. Their vaunted urban defense doctrine had run into something new. Not just men, but the men with rifles that turned every alleyway into a storm. For the Americans, it was confirmation. The Garand wasn't just a weapon. It was a city-fighting tool, a shield against the sniper's bullet, and the key that opened the gates of Germany itself. December 19th, 1944, Foy, Belgium. Snow clung to the roofs of stone farmhouses, the forest thick with fog and pine. The Battle of the Bulge had erupted only days earlier, and American units found themselves under siege by German forces determined to split the Allied lines. For infantrymen in the Ardennes, the greatest danger came not from tanks rumbling through the mist, but from the single sharp crack of a hidden sniper. Private First Class Charles DeWitt of the 101st Airborne recalled his patrol moving cautiously down a frozen lane when a rifle shot echoed through the trees. The man at the front dropped, hit in the chest. We dove into the snow. The worst part was the silence after. You knew he was still out there. But unlike the First World War, unlike North Africa, the Americans didn't stay buried in fear. Garands were lifted, safeties clicked off, and within seconds the lane was alive with fire. 8 rounds each, slamming into tree lines and barn windows. A dozen rifles firing as one, their echoes rolling through the snow like thunder. The sniper never fired again. This was the pattern in the Ardennes. German sharpshooters, many of them veterans of the Eastern Front, had been drilled to take advantage of American hesitancy. In Russia, a single marksman could freeze entire units with one well-placed shot. But the Garand stripped away that hesitation. Where once squads would scatter or wait for support, now they answered instantly, overwhelming a sniper's perch before he could chamber another round. Cold weather made the contrast sharper. American after-action reports praised the Garand's reliability in snow and frost. Despite freezing temperatures, the gas-operated system rarely jammed. German rifles, especially KR-98s exposed to sleet, sometimes stuck when bolts froze in their tracks. U.S. commanders noted this advantage in 13th Corps debriefings. Enemy rifles misfire in cold. Ours continue. The Ardennes wasn't just forests, it was villages too. Bastogne, Noville, Foy, all reduced to battlefields of ruined homes and hidden threats. German snipers used attic windows and cellar loopholes, firing into streets choked with rubble. American responses were immediate and ferocious. Rifle squads stormed buildings under a storm of their own fire, Garands barking at walls, windows, even shadows. Sergeant Henry Collins of the 2nd Infantry Division later described it, "We didn't give them time. The second you heard a crack, the whole squad turned that way. By the time he thought of working his bolt, we had 30 rounds in the air." Captured German accounts reveal frustration. One sniper, interrogated near Hauffalize in January 1945, confessed that we could kill one, sometimes two. Then always came a flood of fire. It was suicide to stay in position. Another admitted, the Americans had rifles like automatics. We feared their reply more than their artillery. Even in the worst days of the siege at Bastogne, when ammunition was low and supplies scarce, the Garand remained the backbone of American resistance. 8 rounds at each clip gave defenders confidence that they could suppress snipers without waiting for heavy weapons. Major General Anthony McAuliffe later credited the infantry's resilience in part to the volume of rifle fire our men could sustain. By mid-January, the German offensive had stalled. The Ardennes forests, blanketed in snow and blood, bore witness to the clash between patience and speed, precision and volume. Snipers who had hoped to paralyze the Americans instead found themselves outgunned, their advantage erased by a rifle born in Springfield Armory nearly a decade earlier. The winter had been meant as Germany's last gamble, but in the frozen villages of Belgium, the Garand once again proved decisive. The sniper's war had no pause left. March 6, 1945, Cologne, Germany. The Rhine River shimmered beneath gray skies, its bridges blasted apart by retreating German engineers. Cologne, once one of Germany's proudest cities, was now a skeleton of rubble and dust, flattened by years of Allied bombing. Yet inside its ruins lurked one of the most stubborn threats to advancing American troops: snipers, hidden in the broken shells of churches, factories, and shattered apartments. The 3rd Armored Division entered Cologne that morning, supported by infantry from the 104th Division. Their progress was measured not in miles, but in blocks. Every corner carried danger. Every collapsed wall could conceal a muzzle. The cathedral's spires still stood, defiant amid the devastation. And around them, German sharpshooters turned the ruins into a killing field. Corporal Joseph Tamburo remembered the first hours of the push. You couldn't see them until it was too late. One man dropped near the cathedral steps, another by the tram line. The sniper would wait, take his shot, then vanish. But unlike Stalingrad, unlike Warsaw, the Americans carried a weapon that rewrote the sniper's script. The Garand gave them speed and confidence in streets where hesitation meant death. When a shot rang out, squads didn't freeze. They scattered into doorways, then replied in unison, 8 rounds hammering out in seconds, windows shattering, masonry crumbling under the storm of lead. One report from the 104th Infantry Division described a single sniper in a bell tower who killed 3 men before being overwhelmed. Riflemen with M1s poured fire into the tower at such volume the sniper's perch collapsed, the officer wrote. The body was later found amid fallen stone and shattered beams. German accounts from Cologne echoed the same theme: frustration and fear. A German Wehrmacht sharpshooter, captured near Ehrenfeld, admitted, "We tried to hold the streets as in Russia, but the Americans fired too much, too fast. We could not hide long enough to shoot twice." Another prisoner recalled his disbelief. "Every man had a rifle that fired like a machine gun. We thought only their machine gunners could do this." Urban combat magnified Garand's strengths. In the close quarters of Cologne's ruins, American squads didn't need long-range precision, they needed overwhelming suppression. A single clip of 8 could clear a building entrance, silence a sniper's nest, or allow riflemen to rush across an exposed street. German snipers, trained to exploit hesitation, instead faced counterfire, so immediate it stripped them of their edge. The psychological effect was as great as the tactical. Soldiers advancing under fire knew they could answer instantly. As Sergeant Walter Haynes of the 3rd Armored Division recalled, "The Garand gave us guts. You knew if somebody shot, you could blast back with enough fire to cover your run." The capture of Cologne was filmed by U.S. Signal Corps cameramen, footage that later became iconic. Tanks rolling past the cathedral, riflemen darting between ruins, snipers flushed out of upper floors with volleys of Garand fire. For the American infantry, this was no longer a cautious advance, but a relentless push, made possible by the confidence of their weapon. By nightfall, on March 6th, Cologne had fallen. The Rhine lay open to Allied crossing, and the last barrier to the heart of Germany began to crack. In the words of General Collins of 7th Corps, Cologne was the end of the Wehrmacht's illusions. Their snipers could no longer slow us. The ruins of the Reich had become the stage where Germany's once feared sharpshooters found themselves outmatched not by superior stealth, but by the relentless rhythm of 8 rounds at a time. May 1945. The guns fell silent. The Reich lay in ruins, its armies shattered, its cities reduced to rubble. For those who had survived the long war from North Africa to the heart of Germany, one lesson was etched deep into memory. The rifle mattered, and in this war, the American rifle had made the difference. The German sniper, once a terror on every front, had found his edge blunted in the West. Against Soviets at Stalingrad, a single well-hidden marksman could freeze entire companies. In France, Italy, and the Ardennes, he found a new enemy: squads armed with M1 Garands, each soldier capable of answering fire instantly, pouring lead into windows, steeples, and tree lines. The bolt-action rifle that had once ruled the battlefield now lagged behind. U.S. after-action reports from Normandy through Cologne emphasized the same point: volume of fire saved lives. The Garand's 8-shot clip gave ordinary riflemen the ability to suppress snipers before they could strike again. Infantrymen no longer advanced in fear of one hidden shooter. They advanced knowing they could overwhelm him. Colonel S.L.A. Marshall, in his post-war studies, observed, "The semi-automatic rifle was the first true weapon of equality between the individual soldier and the trained sniper. Its presence reduced the sniper's advantage to seconds." German testimonies collected in Allied interrogation centers reinforced this theme. Former Wehrmacht sharpshooters admitted they abandoned positions sooner, fired fewer shots, and hesitated to engage American patrols. One officer summarized the shift: "We were not beaten by numbers alone. We were beaten because their common soldier had a rifle that fired faster than ours." The statistics told the same story. By war's end, over 5.4 million M1 Garands had been produced, equipping nearly every American infantryman across 2 oceans. The U.S. strategic Bombing survey concluded that infantry fire superiority enabled by semi-automatic rifles was decisive in suppressing enemy snipers and strongpoints in urban combat. The legacy extended beyond Europe. In the Pacific, Marines clearing caves and villages against Japanese defenders relied on the same rapid fire. Veterans of Tarawa, Saipan, and Okinawa later echoed the words of their comrades in France. The Garand's 8 rounds gave them courage when stepping into the unknown. When peace came, the rifle returned with its soldiers. Many GIs would never forget the metallic ping of an empty clip ejecting, a sound that had meant survival on the battlefields of Europe. The Garand became not only a weapon, but a symbol, the rifle that had carried the United States through its greatest trial. General George S. Patton, who had praised it years earlier, was proven correct. His famous declaration still rang true in 1945, the greatest battle implement ever devised. The sniper war, however, did not end with victory in Europe. In Korea, Garands once again faced bolt-action rifles, and once again, the American infantryman's ability to fire fast and true gave him the edge. Even as new weapons emerged, assault rifles, carbines, automatic rifles, the lessons of World War II remained. Speed mattered, fire superiority mattered, and technology could shift the balance between hunter and hunted. For the German snipers of 1944 and 1945, the lesson had been written in ruin. They had not been undone by carelessness or lack of skill. They had been undone by time itself, by a weapon ahead of its age. As Cologne smoldered, as the Ardennes thawed, as victory parades filled the streets back home, the memory remained with those who had fought it. The Garand had not only armed a generation, it had reshaped the battlefield, one 8-shot clip at a time.